D4VD's name was already etched into the music world as a rising star, but the night his body was discovered sealed in the trunk of his own Tesla, his fame took on a chilling new meaning. What began as a tragic loss of a young artist spiraled into one of the strangest murder mysteries investigators had ever faced. 7 bizarre claims that blurred the line between technology, crime, and conspiracy. The night was unusually still when the call came into the Los Angeles Highway Patrol. A passerby had spotted a Tesla pulled over on the shoulder of the freeway, its hazard lights faintly blinking in the dark. To most, it looked like just another accident on a long stretch of road. But when officers arrived, they quickly realized this was no ordinary crash. The car's sleek white frame had no signs of major damage, as though it hadn't even collided with anything. Its doors were locked, the windows rolled up, and the battery still humming faintly. What was stranger, though, was the driver's absence. As the officers worked their way around the vehicle, they noticed something that immediately shifted the situation from a routine check to a crime scene. The trunk, though closed, emitted an odd smell. When they forced it open, what they saw left even seasoned detectives shaken. Inside, wrapped in a tarp with duct tape securing the edges, was the body of a young man. His features were unmistakable. It was D4V, a rising star who had been gaining momentum in the music world. Known for his moody lyrics and mysterious online presence, his fan base had grown rapidly in just a short time. To them, he was a voice of raw emotion and intensity. To investigators, he had now become the victim of a brutal and bizarre crime. Word spread quickly, and within hours the freeway was flooded with flashing lights and curious onlookers trying to catch a glimpse of what was happening. News crews picked up the story before police even confirmed the identity, and rumors raced across social media. Fans didn't want to believe it. Some insisted it had to be a mistake, that the body wasn't really him. Others began speculating about the strange circumstances of the Tesla's discovery. Why had the car been abandoned? Why was the trunk sealed in such a deliberate way? And where had the driver gone? Inside the vehicle, investigators searched for any signs of a struggle. The front seat was spotless, with no blood, fingerprints, or broken glass. The navigation system showed a recent route, but it wasn't leading to any of D4VD's usual hangouts or the studio he frequented. Instead, the car had been traveling toward an industrial district, far from his known circles. The fact that the body had been concealed so carefully raised even more questions. Whoever had placed it there had taken time to wrap it tightly, making sure it couldn't be identified at a glance. Detectives knew immediately this wasn't a simple hit and run. The Tesla itself became a puzzle. Unlike ordinary cars, its onboard computer stored vast amounts of data: location history, speed, and even cabin recordings. That meant the vehicle could hold crucial evidence about what really happened in the hours leading up to the discovery. The early findings only deepened the mystery. Forensic teams noted that the driver's seat had been adjusted for someone taller than D4VD. His phone wasn't inside the vehicle, and neither were his personal belongings. As the investigation pushed forward, what started as a roadside discovery began to spiral into something much larger. Fans continued to mourn, while investigators braced themselves for the grim task of unraveling how a promising young star ended up lifeless in the trunk of his own car. The case was no longer about an abandoned Tesla. It was about secrets hidden in plain sight, and a story that would only grow stranger with every new clue. The first strange revelation came from the Tesla itself. Unlike other vehicles, this car recorded nearly everything. From speed and steering to GPS coordinates and even snippets of what was said inside, the onboard system acted like a black box. When investigators retrieved the data, they expected to see the car driven manually along a predictable route. Instead, they found that the Tesla had been operating in autopilot mode for nearly the entire trip. This immediately raised eyebrows. Autopilot was designed to make driving safer, not to conceal crimes. Yet the data showed the vehicle gliding effortlessly through the streets until it reached the isolated stretch of freeway where it was found. The bigger question was, if no one was behind the wheel, then who had placed the body in the trunk? Digging deeper into the digital logs, analysts discovered something even more unusual. The route the car had taken didn't match any saved addresses or known patterns from D4VDAS previous trips. He had not been heading home, nor toward any friends or recording studios. Instead, the Tesla was guided into an industrial area lined with warehouses and shipping containers. This wasn't a random error. Someone had programmed or manipulated the car to make this journey. The idea that the system had been hacked began circulating among investigators. It wasn't impossible. Security experts had long warned that cars connected to the internet could be vulnerable to outside interference. What puzzled detectives most was how precise the movements seemed. The Tesla slowed at stop signs, merged onto highways, and even exited at the correct ramps. It wasn't behaving like a system glitch. Whoever orchestrated this had enough knowledge to control not only the navigation, but also the way the car responded to real traffic. For many, it was the first sign that the murder may have been more calculated than initially believed. If someone had the ability to command the car remotely, they could transport evidence without ever being physically present. When police compared the timing of the car's movements with traffic camera footage, they noticed a disturbing detail. On at least 3 separate cameras, a dark SUV appeared to be trailing the Tesla. Sometimes it lingered several cars back, and other times it seemed to vanish, only to reappear at the next intersection. Whether this was coincidence or surveillance was unclear, but it added another layer to the theory that D4VD's death wasn't random. Some believed the Tesla was being escorted, pushed along its path by unseen handlers who wanted it to end exactly where it did. Meanwhile, fans and media outlets seized on the idea of the self-driving car as a weapon. The story spread rapidly. A young star, silenced by forces that turned his own luxury vehicle into a tool for his disappearance. The public didn't know what to believe. Was it a tragic accident, a high-tech assassination, or something in between? Even experts couldn't agree. What they all understood, however, was that the Tesla was no longer just evidence. It was a witness. And its strange journey that night was the first bizarre clue in a mystery that was only beginning to unfold. The deeper investigators dug into D4VD's personal life, the more contradictions they uncovered. On the surface, he was a rising star with a devoted following, known for haunting music and a carefully cultivated online persona. But beneath that image was another existence, one that shocked even those closest to him. Financial records revealed 2 sets of identities, one tied to his career, the other buried under layers of false names, encrypted accounts, and offshore transfers. While the public saw a young artist enjoying sudden fame, investigators found someone moving vast sums of cryptocurrency through anonymous wallets. Millions had passed through these accounts in just a few months, raising questions about where the money came from and what it was funding. The discovery led police to search storage facilities rented under one of these hidden identities. Inside a unit on the edge of the city, they found items that only deepened the mystery. Laptops had been scorched with fire damage, their hard drives melted as though someone tried to erase them beyond recovery. Shredded documents filled black garbage bags, leaving behind only fragments of words and symbols that hinted at codes or financial records. But the strangest item was a small voice recorder buried beneath a pile of papers. When forensics pieced together its contents, they uncovered hours of muffled conversations. The voices were distorted, sometimes cut off, but what little could be understood hinted at secret meetings, whispered threats, and deals that sounded more like blackmail than business. At first, detectives wondered if this double life was the result of exploitation. Was D4VD being used by someone more powerful, a pawn in a game he didn't fully understand? But as they traced the accounts, they realized the opposite might be true. He wasn't just involved. He appeared to be controlling key parts of the operation. Transfers bore his fingerprints, and some of the fake names led back to his online handles, cleverly disguised in ways only those who knew him well would notice. It became possible that D4VD had been playing a dangerous role in both the music industry and in underground dealings far outside of it. The voice recordings suggested meetings with people he couldn't trust. There were mentions of deadlines, missing files, and warnings about consequences if he failed to deliver. Whoever he was dealing with wasn't ordinary. Their influence seemed to stretch across borders, and their threats carried weight. Some investigators began to believe the murder was tied to this double life. Maybe D4VD had stumbled into something too big for him to control, or maybe he had tried to turn the tables on those he was working with. Either way, the hidden storage unit painted a picture of someone living with secrets far darker than anyone suspected. For fans, the revelations shattered the image of a struggling artist pouring his heart into music. For detectives, it raised new fears. If D4VD had been entangled in blackmail, secret accounts, and burned evidence, then his death wasn't just a tragic loss. It was a warning, proof that the people he was connected to had no hesitation in silencing him permanently. The investigation widened as new witnesses began stepping forward, each offering strange and unsettling accounts that pushed the case into darker territory. The first came from a night worker at a gas station, not far from where the Tesla had last been seen before the crash. He claimed that only a few days before the discovery, D4VD had met with a man in a mask. The encounter took place in the shadows near the pumps, away from security cameras, but the worker insisted the masked figure passed something to D4VD, small, metallic, and hidden quickly into his jacket pocket. The worker couldn't say who the man was, only that his presence felt deliberate, as though the meeting was carefully arranged. Detectives could not confirm the claim, but the image of a masked figure slipping something to the victim only deepened suspicions of a conspiracy. Another account came from a long-haul truck driver who frequently traveled the same route where the Tesla had been found. He reported seeing a dark SUV trailing close behind the Tesla for nearly an hour the night of the crash. According to him, the vehicle didn't behave like ordinary traffic. It maintained distance but never strayed too far, following every lane change and turn until the Tesla reached the isolated stretch of freeway. When the Tesla pulled over, the SUV allegedly slowed before vanishing into the darkness without stopping. Investigators reviewed available traffic cameras, and while some grainy footage showed what could have been the same SUV, the details were too blurry to confirm. Still, the possibility that the Tesla was being shadowed by unknown pursuers added another layer of fear. The third and most disturbing account came from a neighbor who lived across the street from D4VD's house. She told detectives she heard chilling screams echoing from his home the night before he disappeared. At first, she thought it was music or a late-night argument, but the longer it went on, the more convinced she became that someone inside was in serious distress. She claimed the noise stopped suddenly, followed by the sound of a car door slamming and an engine starting. No one else reported hearing it, but her statement lined up with the narrow time frame in which investigators believed D4VD vanished from his home. Each of these testimonies pulled the case in a different direction. If the masked meeting was real, it hinted at secret dealings right before his death. If the SUV was truly following him, it suggested he was being stalked. And if the neighbor's story was accurate, then the violence may have started before the Tesla ever left his driveway. The contradictions frustrated detectives. With no solid evidence tying the accounts together, they couldn't tell if they were chasing separate threads of truth or being misled by coincidence. Yet the sheer strangeness of the reports couldn't be ignored. Piece by piece, the puzzle began to suggest a coordinated effort against him, one that involved multiple players working in shadows. The possibility grew that D4VD hadn't been caught in a single mistake or betrayal, but that forces had been converging around him from all sides, waiting for the moment when he could no longer escape. The most unsettling turn in the case came not from a witness or a camera, but from the victim himself. When investigators gained access to D4VD's personal phone, They expected to find texts, calls, or perhaps evidence of threats. Instead, buried deep in the notes application, they discovered a single message written just hours before the Tesla was abandoned. It read, "They're not after me. They're after the car." The line was simple, almost cryptic, yet it changed the entire trajectory of the investigation. What could possibly be inside the vehicle that was worth killing for? Experts immediately turned their attention back to the Tesla, pulling apart its systems with more scrutiny than before. What they uncovered only fed into the growing sense of unease. Hidden within the vehicle's computer were fragments of encrypted files. They weren't part of Tesla's normal operating system, and no one could explain how they got there. Some pieces appeared to be corrupted. Others were locked behind levels of encryption so advanced that even digital forensics teams struggled to access them. The fragments were enough to suggest the car was carrying data it was never designed to hold. Theories spread rapidly. Some believed the files were tied to the secret financial dealings investigators had already uncovered in D4VDA's hidden accounts. Others speculated that he had been transporting sensitive information for someone else, using the Tesla as an unlikely courier. A darker theory suggested he had stumbled upon something illegal, digital evidence powerful enough to expose dangerous people, and that he had stored it inside the car for safekeeping. Whatever the truth, the message on his phone implied he knew the car itself had become the target. The strange data wasn't the only discovery. Technicians also noticed unusual modifications to the vehicle systems. Someone had tampered with the autopilot functions, embedding unauthorized code that allowed outside access. It confirmed suspicions that the car's bizarre route wasn't an accident, but a controlled operation. Whoever had altered the system had the skill to guide the Tesla remotely, making it both a container and a weapon. This revelation added weight to the idea that the vehicle was central to the entire crime, not just a dumping ground for the body. Meanwhile, the encrypted files remained a haunting presence in the case. Investigators who tried to break into them faced repeated crashes and errors, almost as if the data was rigged to destroy itself when tampered with. Every failed attempt only fueled speculation. Was this the proof of a larger conspiracy, evidence meant to stay buried at any cost? Or was it a diversion planted to lead authorities in circles while the real motive remained hidden elsewhere? For the public, the mystery became almost unbearable. A promising artist was gone, his body found in the trunk of a car that appeared to be carrying secrets no one could fully unlock. Fans clung to the possibility that he had left behind a clue to explain it all, while skeptics insisted the case would forever remain a labyrinth of claims and theories. What was undeniable was the eerie weight of his final words. If D4VD was right, and they were never after him, but the car itself, then his death was not just a tragedy, but part of something far more complex, something still concealed in the silent systems of a machine that refused to give up its secrets.